I know. And then he said they were roommates. Oh, Vincent, I gotta go. Thanks again for letting me stay at your house, though. But I gotta teach Art 111 now, so we'll talk later. Bye. Hey guys, sorry about that. Um, let's go ahead and get started with our first lesson of the semester. Let me go ahead and just share my screen real quick. I don't want to waste any more of y'all's time with that. Oh, sorry, I gotta get out of my recent searches here. Just looking at poodles. Sorry about that. I don't want to waste any more time. All right, let's jump into lesson 1, discovering a world of art. And ignore my background here. I'm staying at a friend's place this week, so yeah, we'll be back to a normal setting probably the next time. All righty. So let's just get right into it, right? So art that we're talking about generally refers to the visual arts such as drawing, painting, sculpture, architecture, and film. There's other types of art as well, such as music, theater, and literature, but for this class, we're mostly going to be focusing on the visual arts. Now, there is some overlap that happens within the visual arts, especially when we get like later into more contemporary work. But for the most part, we'll be talking about the more conventional visual art forms. Now, I'd like for you to take a second and pause this video and then jump back into your Edpuzzle folder and watch the What is Art video. So I'll give you a minute to just pause and watch that video real quick, and then we will jump back into this PowerPoint, but I will see you then. All righty. Hopefully you're back. That video is a little cringy, I know, a little cheesy, but I like to kind of get that was started at the beginning of the semester, and just to kind of get the idea of what art is and what art can be sort of, juggling around in your brain a little bit, whether it's a, banana taped to a wall, which can be kind of absurd, or it's a conventional, Van Gogh painting. It's, there's the definition of what art is, especially in today's society, is very vague and constantly changing. So, just wanted to get that idea kind of rolling around in your brain and get some of the stigmas about what can be art and what can't be art out of the way. So in this lesson and in our first few lessons that we'll do, we'll mostly be talking about our basic terminology when it comes to art appreciation. And so this will be sort of like a building block to the rest of our units and our modules throughout the semester. So I like to just kind of hit the ground running with, learning some new terminology. So that's kind of like our learning goals for this lesson, is just to get some words out there, get familiar kind of using some basic terminology, and just kind of like explore what art is. So a work of art or artwork is what you're going to use to describe what an art piece is. It's the visual expression of an idea or experience formed with skill through the use of a medium. And a medium is a particular material along with its accompanying technique. So basically what you need to create an artwork is a medium. Now, a medium, not Teresa Caputo, the Long Island medium that was in the early 2000s, but the medium when we're talking about art is chosen by the artist to enforce the function of their work. Now, some conventional mediums are going to be things like paint and charcoal, clay, ink, bronze, and some uncommon mediums or unconventional mediums, just like the banana taped to the wall, can be things like old socks, rubber bands, car parts, old love letters, list goes on and on. Pretty much if it exists, it can be a medium. There's an artist, Mike Kelly, who for some reason his picture is not in the background here. Sorry about that. Mike Kelly's one of my favorite artists though. He's really, really fun and playful. He uses stuffed animals that he thrifts from thrift stores to create large scale installations with his work. So stuffed animals are his medium. And when you refer to mixed media, that means that you're using more than one media at the same time. And that can be conventional or unconventional as well. So conventionally, a mixed media would be something like charcoal and paint mixed together. An unconventional mixed medium would be something like Starbucks tumbler cups and keyboards mixed together. So it really, the definition of what mixed media is and what medium is as far as your brain can take you, as far as your imagination can take you. Now, Let's get into who makes art. What is an artist and how do you become an artist? Really, anyone can make art. There is no hard governed rule out there that says that, you can't make art if you're not a trained professional. However, if you are a trained professional, which, most artists should be, if they're, in the professional world, are referred to as artisans or artists. And those are people who are trained typically in one medium to make things by hand. And I know you're going to ask, can you be trained in stuffed animals? Not really. Usually, the term medium in this sense is more of like general mediums. So I'm going to call like the socks and the rubber bands and all that sub mediums. That's what I'm going to refer to them. That's not like an official term that, is used, but I'm going to call those mediums sub mediums. And medium is going to be the more general term. So let's say that you want to go to art school and you want your discipline to be in ceramics. Then your medium that you were trained in is ceramics. Now, later on down the road, if you want to combine your ceramics and start making it out of old plastic water bottles or something like that, then that can be like your sub medium, but your main medium is ceramics. And just like any profession, being an artist and learning a medium requires you to, learn under a professional setting, such as an apprenticeship or going to art school the traditional way, taking workshops, the list goes on and on. You can be self-taught, but it's rather difficult to get yourself out there and really network yourself to be a professional artist if you are not in one of these sort of communities that sort of come with the apprenticeships and the art school and the workshops and all of that. Being an artist is definitely, like a lot of professions, you have to network within it. You have to get to know people that are in the community. You have to, put your artwork in shows. And then eventually you'll start to be asked to join shows once your name gets out there enough and once enough people know you. So it really is just all about who you know and how you market yourself. And traditionally, I just like to throw this in here because our course is a little bit unconventional compared to the typical just college course in general. But traditionally, being an artist was a career, much like all careers, that was dominated by a specific demographic, which are our upper class white men. So while there are some minorities that exist within that sort of, larger demographic there, they had a harder time making a name for themselves. And so our traditional textbooks tend to overlook those names. But with the OER content, I've really worked really hard to make sure that I find those names and then I use those for our examples whenever we are talking about art history or a specific medium. And so that those names don't get overlooked and those voices don't get overlooked, because that one demographic, we've heard your voice, we know what you have to say. And so I'm interested in kind of hearing new voices and voices that haven't been highlighted quite as much. So that's a little advantage to our class, is that I kind of get to pick and choose what parts of history and what parts of art theory that we discuss and that we focus on more. So hopefully that's exciting for you to get to learn some art names that you may otherwise not have known. So let's talk about the role of the artist. A traditional role of visual art is to describe ourselves and our surroundings. Now, I'm going to link back to early history, like prehistoric cave paintings. Some of those earliest works that we see in the cave paintings is really our biggest signifier that our species compared to other species during like this evolutionary time were progressing and changing in a way that was different than other species. And so these creative processes and creative outlets that we see in the cave paintings signify to, architects, or not architects, historians and, people that kind of research this history, that we were sort of differentiating ourselves from other species during the times. And this is kind of what pushed us into being, in one category and other species as being in another category. So I think that's really interesting because at this time, we don't have language, we don't have cameras, we don't have video. And so these cave drawings are really our biggest artifact to know that, there is something happening, something going on that's changing around 40,000 years ago. So this is a piece here that I'm putting myself in front of from the Chavet Cave in France, one of our earliest prehistoric caves that we have discovered so far. And it was perfectly preserved. It had been covered with a large stone, and hikers actually found this only like 30 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. And so it's been very, very well preserved. So these cave drawings are done in like charcoal probably, or just found materials that had some pigment to them. And they look as if they were done yesterday. So a kind of interesting fact though about these early prehistoric paintings, humans were very rarely depicted in the prehistoric cave paintings. And take that however you will. I just find it really interesting that for the most part, the subject matter here was of animals and tools and things like that, but humans weren't really present in them. We do know, due to like the bones and like the skeletal systems that we found later on around the caves and in the caves, that it was done by humans. But it is rather interesting that early on in the Paleolithic period, we don't really see humans being depicted. Now, when we go to the Neolithic period, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but the Neolithic period following the Paleolithic period, we do start to see some human interaction there. But there is in the drawings, I mean. But early on, it's mostly just animals. And the purpose of these paintings really is not conclusive. We assume that it is from like hunting gathering rituals, ceremonial purposes, things like that, but it's sort of inconclusive. So why do we make art? There is a personal need to make art, and I would really encourage you this semester to think about how you are creative in your daily life. Are you an artist? Are you a baker or a chef? Are you a musician? And you don't have to, those labels and those, kind of like, bigger words to describe it are maybe kind of intimidating. But if you don't have some sort of creative outlet that, dives into the arts a little bit, I would really encourage you to try to find something this semester that interests you, and that you can, kind of develop this semester. It's not a requirement, but just like a little extra credit kind of thing. Try to think of something that you do that you feel is creative. And if you're uncertain if it's creative, reach out to me, and I can kind of help you decide whether or not that is a creative outlet. There's not really a whole lot of rules with that. I'm probably going to tell you that whatever you're doing is probably a creative outlet, but if you're concerned or if you're not sure, let me know. There's also a community need for art. So art can bring communities together. It can make communities visually more appealing. Some examples of community need is from architecture, monuments, and murals. Now, the cool thing that we've got going on right now, there's a federal law that 0.5% of a budget for a public building or any like real like government funded thing that we have that's in our communities, 0.5% of that budget has to go to beautifying it with artwork. So that can be murals, monuments, etc. But when you think about 0.5%, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when we're talking about like $1 billion building, 0.5% of that is, probably several $1,000s, I would say. So that's really interesting, but we just don't want our communities and our spaces to feel that there's no soul, that there's no, community feeling about them. There's nothing that sort of represents the people there. And artwork can absolutely do that. So, if you are in Charlotte or if you're in Gastonia or wherever you're at, whether it's local or not, try to think the next time that you go out or, go out to dinner or, go to the bank or wherever, look around for that, because you might not have noticed the artwork, but if there's any type of public building, you'll see some sort of beautification through artwork that is a part of it, unless it's like a really, really old building. And even then, sometimes they'll add artwork in. And then lastly, we have a global and cultural need for artwork. And I've already kind of talked about this with the role of the artist. But art is needed to help document our history. Before written or spoken language, there was art. And so it can help us better understand different regions of the world and we don't need language necessarily to understand and appreciate an artwork. So whether or not we are, in America, or if we are in Germany or in Russia or in Japan, we don't need the language to be able to appreciate artwork all over the world. So I think that's a really beautiful thing. There's not a whole lot of things outside of artwork that we can do that with. We can do it with music and, theater and, food, but, there's very few things outside of the creative world that we can share experiences with culturally without a language to help us. Now, let's get into what is creativity. So creativity is the ability to bring forth something new that has value to us, a relevance or new way of thinking, or the potential to influence future thought or action. So creativity is definitely a very important part of making artwork, if you could imagine that. Wow. But there is a technical side of it as well that we need to learn and, kind of take from. So the technical side, definitely important, getting your basic foundational skills that we talked about from an apprenticeship or from art school. Those are great. However, when creativity becomes involved, just like our first video that we watched, the what is art video, the lady asked, if I brought a banana into the gallery and I taped it to the wall, would that be considered art? And the gallerist responds and says, no, you didn't think of it first. It wasn't your influence or your new way of thinking about something. It was the previous artist. So that's definitely important for discussion and for the art world to just continue growing, is to have creative minds that can use techniques that they've learned and skills that they have learned in a professional setting, and then spinning some sort of new creativity to those mediums. So this is where you guys come in, and you might be thinking, you might not be thinking, how can I be creative? Even if I don't feel creative, how can I, get into a creative headspace? And even though we're not really making anything in this class so much, we will make a few things, but even though we're more so learning to appreciate artwork, we do need to be creative. We have to have that right side of our brain activated. So 5 traits that define being creative, according to the BYU Marriott School of Business, not art, but business. Associating, questioning, observing, networking, and experimenting are all really, really great ways to get your creative brain going. And those are just sort of like some words. So I'm going to kind of expand on those to kind of help us better understand how to use those words to actually become creative. So let's, for a second here, let's look at this little icon that I've got back here as an example. We've got, some watercolor kind of stuff, and then a light bulb drawing. So if I am just looking at this and I'm blank, I have nothing there, I might start associating different, my thoughts to this piece. So when I see this, I start to see the watercolor and I'm like, oh, that kind of looks like a rainbow. The gradation from yellow to red to purple to blue, that sort of looks like a rainbow. And then I'm like, well, why is this really tight lined thing, in front of this more colorful kind of, splotchy work? I think it really kind of stands out when it looks like that. So I start associating these different things. And then I kind of already started answering this one, but questioning, asking why, is there this sort of juxtaposition between the two styles here? Is it to make it sort of stand out and, look more bold? Or is it to sort of differentiate this, or not differentiate, but sort of imply that there is creativity helps us to get ideas? Or I could just go on a total tangent and saying, oh, should I, take this light bulb and screw it into a lamp? There's all kinds of things that you could question here. You could also observe. So let's pretend for a second that I'm, not in my bedroom or in Vincent's bedroom, but I'm in a gallery and I'm seeing this piece. I might start looking at other artwork. There is some artwork in this bedroom here. But start looking at some of this artwork and saying, like, how does this piece relate to those other pieces? Why are they here together? Start looking around and, kind of taking in the space a little bit more. The next one's networking. So let's pretend that someone's here with me. I might ask them, what do you think of this piece? I'm not really getting anything from it. And so I could, start talking about it, start discussions, start, brainstorming with more than one person. And then lastly, experimenting. So this one I definitely like to encourage for people that like the statement, my kindergartner could do that, or I could do that piece when it comes to like more kind of abstract work and such. But try it. You think if you could do it, experiment. Try to tape a banana to the wall. Does it make you feel anything? Does it make you feel silly? Or does it make you feel like an artist? Just try things out. And you'll slowly start to realize that you yourself are tapped into this more creative side of your brain when you start doing these things. Alrighty, kind of switching gears a little bit, we're going to look at the types of fine art that exist in our world. Really, all artwork fit into one of these three categories when we are talking about what type of art it is. So the first one here is representational art. Representational art is the most easy for us to understand. It is exactly what it is in nature, what something looks like in our natural world. We're not trying to distort or exaggerate or simplify. We're trying to depict it exactly the way that it looks. So I'd like for you to pause real quick and watch the Chuck Close video, and we will jump back in here shortly. So once you have watched the Chuck Close video, you will see that Chuck Close has a very interesting path. He started out as a very representational artist, and then he sort of filtered back into being a more abstract artist after his accident that he had. So his process involves a lot of gritting. It involves a lot of memory. And he sort of went from being really one of the most well-known representational artists to he's still one of the most, well-known representational artists, but has a different sort of flair on it. Our second type is abstract art. And this one and the non-representational art tend to kind of get confused sometimes. Abstract artwork is work that depicts natural objects in a simplified, distorted, or exaggerated way. So it may be obvious to the viewer, or it may need a verbal cue of some sort to sort of like, redirect us as to what it is. So for example, this piece by Matisse, it's called Portrait of Madame. And we know this is a figure. We can tell, it is abstracted a bit because it's simplified. It's sort of exaggerated in parts. However, if there were like, if this was sort of like blurred a little bit more, the lines weren't like as neat and tight, we might need that verbal cue of Portrait of Madame to know that this is figural work. But it's still considered to be abstract if the artist's intention is for it to resemble something in the natural world. Now, on the other hand, non-representational work, non-representational or non-objective or non-figurative, however you want to say it, there's a lot of terms for this one, is art that refers to nothing other than itself or outside of itself. So it's as in pure sound forms of music. The example I have here is a piece by Kandinsky, who was an artist who actually was a part of Black Mountain College, which is just right above the Asheville area. It's no longer in business. It's no longer a school, but you can visit it still and just sort of like see the old facilities. But Kandinsky was an artist there, and Black Mountain College was made to sort of be a collaborative space between not only visual artists, but also musicians and poets and theater people and, all of those different forms of artwork. And so Kandinsky would partner with composers and listen to their compositions and then paint and draw his reaction or his feeling. But in no way, shape, or form was he attempting to depict anything from the natural world. Now, you can look at this piece and your imaginative, creative side of your brain, the same side that when you look at the clouds, you can start seeing like faces and flowers and different things like that, might look at this piece and you start kind of putting some things together. Like, for example, when I look at this piece, I kind of see like a city and then like a sunrise here. but that's not the artist's intention. And so it's still considered to be non-representational work. Even if I see something there, this is not the artist's intention. Here is some really important vocabulary that I would love, love, love for you to write down. Probably these three words are the ones that I'm the biggest stickler about when it comes to our writing. So just a fair warning there. The first one we've got is subject matter. So this is what the artwork is trying to represent, and it does not refer to anything outside or any of the meaning of the work. So when I look at, let's just visualize, let's use our creative brain to visualize Starry Night real quick, a piece by Vincent van Gogh. So when I think about the subject matter of that piece, I think about the night sky, I think about the like landscape below, the little village that's there, but I'm just describing what my memory is. Let's take the bedroom, for example. The subject matter here is the bed frame and being in an interior space, a window, some paintings on the wall. And then, but I'm not implying that this is someone's, that this is my friend Vincent's bedroom, because that's me assuming something or putting my own personal opinion into it. The form is the visual organization of the elements and principles of design. Now, when we get into modules 2 and 3, we'll better understand what form is. But some just kind of basic examples, I'm going to use the room again. The red that we see here, the bed frame being sort of like this interesting texture, the blue walls. When I start to kind of go more descriptive about the subject matter, that's when we start talking about form. And then even more so, I can talk about how the composition is organized or how the frame is organized, like the bed's on the left side here, and it balances with like the information that's over here, and so on. But we'll get more into form in our modules 2 and 3. And then our last one is content. So content is the message or the meaning of the work of art, what the artist expresses or communicates to the viewer. So the content is very important for sure. However, usually when I'm asking you to talk about an artwork first, I don't want your opinion or the artist's intention to be talked about first. I just want you to describe to me what the subject matter and the form are. And then you can start getting into the content once you kind of like set the scene for us. Form and content are very much inseparable. Content determines the form and form expresses the content. So, obviously the form, which is, this bedroom here, is going to express this is a bedroom. That's why he painted the bed. That's why the pictures are on the wall here. That's why we have a door and, we have walls. That informs what our content is. Let's skip on through this one real quick. You can come back to it if you'd like to. I'd like to talk about looking versus seeing artwork. So looking implies taking in what is before us in a mechanical or goal-oriented way. And then, let's kind of back up for a second here. So most of the time, looking and seeing are pretty synonymous words. However, in our context, looking is going to imply that we're sort of looking at something in a very like robotic way. So if we're looking at artwork, we're not really taking in what it is. It's almost like there's a barrier between us. However, when we're active seeing, which is our first assignment if you've looked ahead, active seeing is more open, receptive, and focused. We're looking with memories, imaginations, and feelings attached to it. And there's an appreciation of a form beyond just the function of what it is. So that takes like human interaction, human emotion, human quality to understand when we're actively looking at an artwork. I'd like for you to pause again and watch the Who Decides What Art Means, and hopefully that can kind of help you a little bit more understand seeing something in active seeing. All righty, welcome back. So after you've watched the Who Decides What Art Means video, you'll kind of have, hopefully you kind of side in one way or another. There's no right or wrong answer. If you kind of lean more towards like the artist's intention as the only one that matters, or if you lean more towards the once an artist puts something out there, that's all that really matters. Or if you feel like there's some kind of like in the middle there, they both matter. I'm more of an in the middle kind of person. I think that those both opinions do matter. Um, and there's always room for interpretation of an artwork. So I would like for you guys to look at this piece here by Edward Weston. It's a photograph. He did a whole series of these peppers. And although it might not look like it at first, this is just a blank or a raw photograph of a sort of interesting, unconventional or non-perfect pepper. And when I look at this piece, I'm not wrong to think that this is, not a pepper. I kind of see two people sort of embracing, and even like I see like them holding a child in between there. But I'm not wrong for thinking that, even though the right answer is that it's a pepper. I'm not wrong for my interpretation being a little bit different than that. And that's sort of Edward Weston's whole sort of deal, thesis, whatever, is that he wants you to look at something or see something in a way that activates your creative side. Alrighty, that is the end of lesson 1. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully I'll be more prepared next time for you to come and won't be in my bedroom here. But yeah, now that we're done with lesson 1, hopefully you know a bit more about the art world. You don't feel like it's, quite as scary as it was maybe in the beginning. You've got a few, terms under your belt now. You are, thinking about what the role of the artist is. You might be thinking about what types of art there are. And you're also thinking, probably most importantly, about active seeing, and how we can turn our brains onto our creative side and start actively seeing what the artwork is that we're viewing, instead of just, having that wall up between us. In lesson 2, we're going to talk about evaluating artwork. And so I'm excited to see you guys there.